Let me share with you a remarkable story from the Bible. It's called the parable of the sower. Now let me spell it out for you, S-O-W-E-R. The sower, back in ancient times, was the one who planted the crops. His job was simple yet profound. He prepared the ground, took a bag full of seeds, and walked across the land, sowing those seeds. That's how they started the process of growing crops. This story is not just a simple story. It's rich with lessons, particularly when it comes to understanding something called the law of averages. You see, there are some powerful insights that leap out at you when you dig into this parable. First off, the sower was no fool. He was a wise man, and that's a big advantage right there. They didn't just send anyone out to do this important job. It wasn't left to someone clueless. It was entrusted to someone who knew what he was doing. Secondly, the sower was ambitious. And let me tell you, by the time you finish this story, you'll see just how ambitious he was, an ambition that's worth admiring. But here's the key. Ambition needs to be balanced. One wise person said, "I've learned to be both ambitious and content." Now that's a rare balance, but it's something to strive for. Ambition, when channeled correctly, is a powerful force. And this sower had it in spades. Ambition isn't the problem, it's making sure you're following the right formula for success that matters. The Bible, in its wisdom, offers us one of the greatest formulas for achieving wealth and power. It says, "Be faithful over few, and I will make you ruler over much." That's profound wisdom. You see, it tells us that it's perfectly fine to aspire to be a ruler, to want more in life, but the path to getting there starts with how well you manage the little things. Someone once said, "If I had a fortune, I'd take good care of it, but with just a paycheck, I don't know where it all goes." Well, I say no to that thinking. The real test of your faithfulness isn't when you have much, but when you have little. I remember telling Mr. Schoaf when I was just 25, if I had more money, I'd have a better plan. And do you know what he said to me? He said, "Mr. Rohn, I'd suggest to you that if you had a better plan, you'd have more money. It's not the amount that counts. It's the philosophy that guides your plan that makes the difference." Even if a child is just $1, what should they do with it? That's a crucial question, because the way they handle that dollar will shape the rest of their life. You might think, well, it's just a child and it's just $1. But that is what I call a massive error in judgment. Underestimating the importance of small decisions is a colossal mistake. If a child is allowed to spend that whole dollar without understanding the impact of that choice, we've done them a great disservice. We've failed to explain the journey they're embarking on and the road they're choosing when they decide how to use that dollar. So remember, it's not about the size of what you have. It's about how you handle it. Whether it's a small seed or a small dollar, how you manage it determines the harvest you'll reap in the future. Imagine this. A child wants to spend the entire dollar they have. Now, as a parent or a mentor, it's crucial to step in and say, no, you can't spend the whole dollar. Naturally, the child will ask, why not? And that's where you seize the teaching moment. You say, let me show you why not. And you take that child to the other side of town, to the less fortunate areas. You say, look around, would you want to live here? This is where people end up when they spend every penny they make. This is where they live. There's something powerful about showing a child the harsh reality, giving them a visual experience that sticks with them. It's one thing to talk about the dangers of spending all you have, but when a child sees the consequences firsthand, it hits home in a way words never could. They'll come back with eyes wide open asking, would you want to live like this? Would you want to end up here? And the answer, of course, is a resounding no. That's when you tell them, then you can't spend the whole dollar. It's a lesson they won't soon forget. Now back to the story of the sower. Remember, the sower was a smart man. And not only that, he was ambitious. But there's another key point here. He didn't just sit around thinking about what he wanted. He went to work. He understood that it takes action to bring ideas to life. You see, ideas without labor are like seeds that never get planted. They remain just ideas. They never become real, never bear fruit. The sower knew this, and he wasn't afraid of hard work. That's a quality worth admiring, but let's dig deeper into this story. The sower had excellent seed, top quality. The story tells us he had the best seed. And that's exciting because when you're involved in something you believe is the best, whether it's a product, a service, or an idea, it fuels your passion. It's important to feel proud of what you're working on, to believe that you're dealing with the best of the best. So here's the sower, smart, ambitious, hardworking, with the best seed in hand. He's ready to go. And then life begins to unfold, showing us what we call the law of averages. The sower goes out and sows his seed, but what happens? The first batch of seed falls by the wayside, and the birds come along and eat it up. Now, here's where the lesson deepens. As a leader or a teacher, it's essential to prepare people for what I call the inevitable. Life has its inevitable moments, and this is one of them. You've got to teach people that birds are going to come and take some of the seed. That's just how it is. It's inevitable. And if you don't prepare people for these inevitabilities, they'll be caught off guard. They'll be upset, discouraged, and maybe even quit. But if they understand that some losses are part of the game, they'll be ready. They'll know what to expect. So here's the scenario. The sower sows his seed, and the birds get some of it. He sows more seed, and the birds get that too. Is this unusual? No, it's pretty typical. The birds are going to get some of the seed. That's life. And understanding this is crucial. It's not about avoiding the birds. It's about sowing enough seed so that despite the birds, you still get a harvest. That's the law of averages at work. Let's talk about those of you who are out there building an organization, maybe recruiting people to join your team. You've got a vision and you're excited to share it. You say to someone like John, "Hey, John, I've got something really important for you. This could change your life, whether you want to make some extra money or dive in full time. This could be your opportunity. Come check it out." And John, feeling intrigued, says, "I think I'm ready for something like that. Let's meet Thursday night and I'll hear you out." You're thrilled. You say, "Fantastic, John, I'll see you then." But Thursday night rolls around and guess what? John isn't there. You're left standing there wondering, where's John? What happened? The birds. Now, what do I mean by the birds? Well, who knows exactly what form they take? But they're out there and they're inevitable. Maybe it was his brother-in-law saying, "Sales, you're not getting into sales, are you?" Who told you were cut out for that? Or perhaps a friend dropped by or something came up that distracted him. All sorts of things can swoop in and steal someone's good intentions, like birds snatching up seed. It's inevitable. So when the birds get to your seed, when John or someone like him doesn't show up, you've got a couple of choices to make. First, you could decide to go after those birds. You might think, "I'll go sort this out, get John back on track." But here's the catch. If you start chasing after birds, what happens? You've left the field. You're no longer sowing seeds. And when you're not in the field, the law of averages can't work in your favor. You see, it's crucial to know what's worth your time and what isn't. You can't let every distraction pull you away from the bigger picture. Now, let me share a principle that ties into this. There are two ways to have the tallest building in town. One way is to work hard, brick by brick, building up your own tower. The other way? Tear down everyone else's buildings until yours is the last one standing. Sure, once you knock down the first building, you might feel pretty good. But as you keep tearing others down, you'll soon find yourself in trouble. See, after you've torn down a few, people will start to notice. You'll show up at the next building, and the owner's going to be ready for you, saying, "I've heard about you. You're not here to build, you're here to wreck." And that's where the real problems start. Instead of being known as a builder, someone who creates, you'll be known as a destroyer. That, my friends, is what we call a massive error in judgment. Building something great requires focus, persistence, and the wisdom to stay in the field, no matter what distractions or birds come your way. Keep planting those seeds and let the law of averages work in your favor. You can't control the birds, but you can control how you respond. Stay the course, and you'll find success. The key to success is knowing where to focus your energy and time. Spend it on the things that truly count. Understand the law of averages and keep your eyes on the field, not the birds that try to distract you. Now, let me share a lesson from the wise man in the parable. He knew this truth well. He didn't chase the birds. He didn't waste time trying to get back what was lost. Instead, he kept on sowing. Why? Because he was smart. He understood the law of averages. He knew that if he just kept planting, some of the seeds would take root and grow. But the story doesn't end there. The wise man kept sowing, and some of the seeds fell on rocky ground where the soil was shallow. Now, this is another one of those inevitables. It's just part of life. No matter how good your intentions, some seeds are going to land on rocky ground. This is what I call the stuff of life. As a leader, it's crucial to understand these things, the seasons, the challenges, the ratios, and the inevitables so you can guide others through them. So what happens next? The seeds on the rocky ground start to sprout and little plants begin to grow. But because the soil is so shallow, the roots can't go deep. Then the first hot day comes along and those little plants wither and die. Now, you might say, wow, what a disappointment. And you'd be right, it is disappointing. But here's the reality. Some people are going to give up before they really get started, even when you've got a great idea to share. Let me give you an example. 30 days after you've had a meeting with someone like John, you look around and John isn't there. You wonder, where is John? You don't know. You might say, I was sure John would last at least 30 days, but he didn't. Why? Because it's inevitable. Maybe someone said boo and he quit. Maybe it got tough and he wasn't ready for it. He gave up on the first hot day. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Understand that these things will happen. Not every seed will grow. Not every person will stick it out. But if you keep sowing, keep working the field, eventually the law of averages will work in your favor. And that's where success is found, in staying the course, in understanding the inevitables, and in knowing that persistence pays off in the end. Let me tell you, there will be times when you're disappointed. Oh yes, especially when it's someone you like, someone you trust. But as a leader, here's the real challenge. You've got to learn to discipline your disappointment. Because that's part of life, isn't it? Life's about managing disappointments and understanding the law of averages. Now, what does that mean? It means that sometimes things will go your way and sometimes they won't. But you've got to keep going. Take the example of the wise man. What did he do? He kept on sowing. Now that's brilliant, isn't it? He understood the law of averages better than anyone. He knew that not every seed would find good soil, but he also knew that if he kept sowing, eventually some of those seeds would take root. So he kept on sowing, and guess what? This time the seed falls on thorny ground. And you might think, how much more of this bad ground can we get? But hang in there. The story isn't over yet. The seed starts to grow, but the thorns choke it to death. And it dies. What is this called? This is called the inevitable. Do you know what those thorns represent? They represent the cares of life, the little distractions, the minor inconveniences. Some people let these little things crowd out the big opportunities. And why do they do that? I don't know. I'm just an amateur in all this. But I do know this. The key is to understand the inevitable. You see, everybody faces it. The wise man studies the inevitable. He doesn't let it disturb him too much. Instead, he learns how to manage it. And that's how he moves on to what really matters in life. You see, everyone's got a story. I called up John the other day. I said, John, where were you last night? We had an important meeting. And John says, well, you know, I can't make every meeting. So I ask, why not, John? And John starts listing out his reasons. The backyard fence is sagging and the dogs might get loose. You just can't let your dogs run loose, can you? And I said, all right, John, I get it. Now here's the point. We all have a list, don't we? We all have reasons, excuses, and distractions. But the wise person, the leader, learns to manage these distractions, not let them control his life. He disciplines his disappointment, studies the inevitable, and keeps on sowing. Because in the end, that's what leads to growth and success. John tells me the screen door came off the hinges and you just can't let things fall apart. You've got to take time to keep things fixed up. I say, okay, John. Then he says, there's some extra trash piled up in the garage. You just can't let mountains of trash take over. You've got to take care of your trash. Again, I say, okay, John, but you know what I can hear over the phone? I can hear the thorns growing. Because some folks, believe it or not, have an incredible talent for majoring in minor things. They let the little things take over. I don't know why. It's a mystery. It's inevitable. It's just part of the grand scenario of life. So I'm driving through the neighborhood one day, and there's John out in his yard mowing his lawn. He's red in the face, sweating, and he's cussing the weeds like they're his worst enemy. I pull over and ask John, what on earth are you doing? He shouts back, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm mowing this lousy lawn. And I tell him, John, there's plenty of neighborhood boys around here who'd mow your lawn. He grumbles they want $5. I'll mow it myself. And I just shake my head, okay, John. Now here's my first thought. There ought to be a law against cheating a little neighborhood boy out of $5. But you see, there's a bigger point to this scenario. It's the story of the sower, and it's meant to prepare us for what's inevitable. It's meant to teach us about the law of averages. Now here's how it goes. The sower kept on sowing. He wasn't fazed. He knew the numbers. He was bright, probably had a little schooling on how this works. He knew about how many seeds the birds would get, how many the sun would scorch, and how many would be choked by the thorns. He knew some people let the little things, the minor things, cheat them out of the big chances. But he kept on sowing. And here's the good news. Here's the promise for you as a leader. The seed will always find good ground. It always will. That's the law of averages. Sure, there'll be thorns. Sure, there'll be weeds. Sure, some will let the little things keep them from the big things. But there will always be some good ground. And if you keep on sowing, you're bound to find it. So don't let the distractions, the weeds, and the thorns throw you off course. Don't spend your time mowing the lawn when you could be planting a field. Keep on sowing. Because one thing is for certain. The seed will find the good ground. It always does. And when it does, that's when you reap the rewards. So stay focused, keep your eye on the big picture, and keep sowing. That's how you win. Here's a key phrase to remember. If you share a good idea often enough, it will eventually fall on good people. And why is that? It's because of the law of averages. You see, the law of averages is a powerful concept. Even when the seed falls on good ground, not all good ground produces the same results. It's said that some of the good ground produced 30%. Wow, that's something. Then some of the good ground produced 60%. Now that's even better. And some of the good ground produced 100%. What do we call that? The law of averages. That's just the way it is. It's one of those things. Now the question is, can you find those 100%ers? The answer is yes, absolutely. But here's the deal. You've got to go through the birds, you've got to endure the hot weather, and you've got to deal with the thorns and the cares of life. You see, it's not just about finding the good ground. It's about understanding that even the good ground comes with its variations. Think about it. Some people you talk to, they'll be 30%ers. They'll take a little of what you say and put it to use. And that's fine. Then there are the 60%ers. They're a little more committed, a bit more engaged. They take more of what you share and really put it into action. That's terrific. But then, if you stay in the game long enough and understand how to work with all kinds, you'll come across the 100%ers. The ones who take it all, run with it, and produce extraordinary results. But here's the challenge. To get to those 100%ers, you've got to learn to work with the 30%ers and the 60%ers. You've got to find a way to make them valuable too. Because they are. Not everyone is going to be a 100%er, and that's okay. You've got to become a skillful leader who understands the law of averages, who knows how to handle all types of people and situations. When you master this, when you know how to encourage the 30%ers to stretch a little more and maybe reach 60%, and when you know how to motivate the 60%ers to see if they can reach for that 100% mark, you're on your way to becoming a great leader. And when you do find those 100%ers, those rare individuals who take everything and give it their all, you'll have something truly special to work with. So don't get discouraged by the birds, the hot weather, or the thorns. Don't let the 30%ers or the 60%ers throw you off track. Instead, see them as part of the process. See them as part of the journey to finding your 100%ers. Because they're out there. And when you find them, that's when the real magic happens. That's when you truly begin to reap the rewards of your efforts. So keep sharing those good ideas. Keep planting those seeds. Because the law of averages says that if you keep at it, you'll find the good ground that produces 100%. And that's when it all pays off.